Picture this. A proud donor walks into a university archive on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, carrying what they believe is a precious piece of family history. The photograph shows their great-great-grandfather's medical school class from 1895. Rows of serious young men in formal attire posed in front of their prestigious institution. The donor smiles warmly as they hand over this treasured keepsake, expecting it to find a nice home in the university's collection. She speaks fondly of her ancestor, describing him as a pioneer in medicine who dedicated his entire life to helping others and advancing medical science. But sometimes, the most innocent-looking gifts hide the darkest secrets imaginable. When historians at the university first received this seemingly ordinary medical school photograph, they saw exactly what you would expect from such an image. 24 aspiring doctors arranged in neat rows, their faces full of determination and hope for their future careers. The kind of image that speaks to medicine's noble pursuit of healing and knowledge. Nothing seemed unusual about these young men from over a century ago. The photograph appeared to be just another piece of medical history, destined to sit quietly in the archives alongside countless other class photos from that era, gathering dust and rarely seen by visitors. Yet something felt deeply off to Dr. Margaret Chen, the university's lead medical historian who had built her reputation on careful analysis. She had spent decades studying photographs from this era, and her trained eye caught subtle details that others might miss completely. The way some students were positioned seemed strange and unnatural. Their expressions were not quite right for a formal class portrait that should have shown pride and professionalism. And there was something about the background that made her pause and look more closely. She noticed that several windows in the building behind them had been boarded up, which was highly unusual for an active medical school. The lighting in the photograph also seemed odd, as if it had been taken at an unusual time of day when most formal portraits would not be scheduled. Dr. Chen decided to investigate further, driven by an instinct that had served her well throughout her career. She began by researching the medical school's records from 1895, digging through boxes of documents that had not been examined in decades. What she found in the dusty archives made her stomach turn and her hands shake as she read. The school had been involved in one of the most disturbing scandals in medical education history. But the real shock was yet to come, when she discovered what role these particular students had played in events that would horrify the entire community. The photograph had been taken in November 1895, just weeks after a gruesome discovery that would rock the entire medical community. Hidden in the school's basement, authorities had found the remains of dozens of bodies. These were not cadavers legally obtained for medical study. They were stolen corpses, taken from graves across the city in the dead of night. The bodies had been stored in crude wooden boxes, stacked like inventory in a warehouse. The smell had been so overwhelming that workers had to wear cloths over their faces just to enter the basement. The practice was called body snatching, and it was more common than most people realized during this dark period in medical history. Medical schools desperately needed fresh corpses for their anatomy classes, but the legal supply was painfully limited. Only executed criminals could legally be used for dissection under the laws of the time. This created a massive black market where grave robbers, known as resurrection men, would dig up recently buried bodies and sell them to desperate medical schools willing to pay top dollar. Dr. Chen's research revealed that this particular school had employed a man known only as William the Ghoul. He worked as the school's janitor during the day, but at night he became something far more sinister. William would take a horse-drawn cart to local cemeteries, armed with shovels and ropes. He targeted fresh graves, especially those of the poor and minorities, knowing their families were less likely to have the resources to seek justice or guard the graves. The resurrection man had developed a system where he could extract a body from its coffin in less than an hour, leaving barely a trace of his work behind. The operation was more organized than anyone had imagined at the time. William kept detailed records of his activities, noting which cemeteries provided the freshest bodies and which times of night offered the best cover from watchmen and police patrols. He had even bribed cemetery workers to provide him with information about recent burials, paying them a percentage of his profits. The medical school paid him handsomely for each corpse delivered to their basement, no questions asked about where the bodies came from. But William's operation was not just about grave robbing, as disturbing as that practice was. The historians discovered something far worse in the school's hidden records. When the demand for bodies grew too high and cemetery security increased, William had crossed a line that chilled everyone who learned the truth. He had begun recruiting accomplices from among the medical students themselves, promising them better grades and special access to the freshest specimens in exchange for their silence and assistance. The photograph itself held clues to this dark secret that had been hiding in plain sight for over a century. Dr. Chen noticed that several students in the back row were holding what appeared to be medical instruments. But upon closer inspection with a magnifying glass, she realized these were not scalpels or forceps used in legitimate medical practice. They were the very tools used to extract bodies from graves. Shovels, ropes, and metal hooks designed to pull corpses from coffins without damaging the valuable specimens inside. The students were not just posing for a class photo, they were celebrating their involvement in the body-snatching operation that had become the worst-kept secret at the medical school. This was their trophy picture, taken just days after their biggest haul of stolen corpses from 3 different cemeteries in a single night. The proud expressions on their faces were not about their medical studies or their dedication to healing. They were boasting about their success as grave robbers and their growing reputation in the underground network of body snatchers. But the most disturbing detail was saved for last, buried deep in police records, that Dr. Chen uncovered after weeks of investigation. William the Ghoul had not stopped at digging up the dead. When body snatching proved too risky and time-consuming due to increased cemetery security, he had turned to murder to meet the medical school's insatiable demand for fresh cadavers. The basement discovery included the remains of at least 12 people who had been killed specifically to supply the medical school with bodies for dissection. The students in the photograph knew about these murders and had become willing participants in the deadly scheme. Several had even assisted William in his murderous work, helping to identify potential victims and lure them to isolated locations where they could be killed without witnesses. The young men who appeared so noble and dedicated to healing had actually been accomplices to serial murder. They had helped choose victims from among the homeless, the poor, and recent immigrants who were unlikely to be missed by authorities or have anyone to search for them when they disappeared. The methods used were particularly cruel and calculated. The students would approach vulnerable people under the false pretense of offering medical help or charity assistance. They would invite potential victims to the medical school for free treatment or food, only to have William kill them once they arrived. The bodies would then be immediately prepared for dissection classes, with the students who had helped in the murders being given priority access to study the fresh specimens. The scandal broke in December 1895, just weeks after this photograph was taken. William the Ghoul was arrested and eventually executed for his crimes. 14 students were expelled from the medical school, their careers destroyed before they could begin. 3 students actually fled the country to avoid prosecution, never to be seen again. The school itself nearly closed due to the public outrage and the lawsuits filed by families of the victims. The local newspapers covered the story for months, with headlines calling it the most shocking crime in the city's history. Public trust in medical education plummeted, and other medical schools faced increased scrutiny from authorities. But somehow this photograph had survived the scandal and the passage of time. It had been passed down through generations of one student's family who had no idea what their ancestor had done or the horrible crimes he had participated in. They believed they were honoring a respected doctor's memory and celebrating his contribution to medical science. Instead, they were unknowingly preserving evidence of one of medicine's darkest chapters and most shameful secrets. The family had even created stories about their ancestor's supposed heroism, claiming he had saved countless lives and been a pioneer in surgical techniques. They had no way of knowing that he had actually helped murder innocent people and had been kicked out of medical school in disgrace. The lies had been passed down along with the photograph, creating a completely false family history. Dr. Chen faced an impossible ethical dilemma that kept her awake at night. Should she tell the donor's family the brutal truth about their ancestor and destroy their cherished family memories? Should the photograph be displayed as a historical artifact to educate people about medicine's dark past? Or should it be hidden away to spare people's feelings and protect the innocent descendants? These questions highlight the complex relationship between historical truth and family legacy, and the sometimes painful cost of uncovering the past. The university ultimately decided to use the photograph as a powerful teaching tool after much debate among faculty and administrators. It now sits in their medical ethics classroom, where students learn about the dark history of their chosen profession and the importance of maintaining ethical standards. The image serves as a chilling reminder that the pursuit of knowledge must never come at the cost of human dignity and life, no matter how noble the supposed goal. This story reveals how medical education was built on a foundation of grave robbing, murder, and corruption that most people never knew existed. The beautiful hospitals and prestigious medical schools of today exist because of the sacrifices made by countless victims whose bodies were stolen and sold like commodities. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about how far people will go in the name of scientific progress and how easily moral boundaries can be crossed when demand outweighs ethical considerations. The 1895 photograph also demonstrates how seemingly innocent family heirlooms can hide terrible secrets that span generations. Every old picture, every document passed down through families, carries stories that we might not be prepared to hear or accept. Sometimes the truth is more disturbing than any fiction writer could imagine, and sometimes learning that truth changes everything we thought we knew about our own history. This discovery changed how historians approach medical photographs from the late 1800s and early 1900s. They now look for similar clues in other images, searching for evidence of body-snatching operations that were once hidden from public view and covered up by institutions. Several other photographs have since been identified as showing medical students with their stolen cadavers or posing with grave-robbing tools, revealing that this practice was far more widespread than previously thought. The case also highlights the critical importance of thorough historical investigation and the value of questioning what we think we know about the past. If Dr. Chen had not noticed those subtle details in the photograph and followed her instincts to investigate further, this story might never have come to light. The victims of William the Ghoul and his student accomplices would have remained forgotten, their murders buried along with the medical school's shameful past and covered up forever. Medical education today operates under strict ethical guidelines and legal oversight that would make such horrors absolutely impossible. Bodies used for dissection are donated voluntarily by people who understand and consent to exactly how their remains will be used for education and research. The dark era of body snatching and murder for medical education officially ended with stronger laws, better oversight, and a fundamental change in how society views the relationship between medical progress and human rights. Yet this photograph from 1895 serves as a chilling reminder of medicine's brutal past and the dangers of unchecked authority. It shows us that even the most noble professions can be corrupted when demand outweighs moral constraints and when institutions prioritize results over ethics. The young men in that image thought they were advancing human knowledge and serving the greater good. Instead, they were participating in a systematic campaign of theft, murder, and deception that destroyed lives and undermined the very principles medicine claims to uphold. The donor's family chose to keep the photograph after learning its true history, despite the pain and shock of discovering what their ancestor had really done. They decided that hiding from the truth would not honor the victims or prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. The image now carries a completely different meaning for them. It represents not pride in their ancestors' supposed achievements, but a solemn commitment to ensuring that such horrors never happen again and that the victims are finally remembered. This story reminds us that history is not always comfortable, convenient, or what we want it to be. Sometimes we discover that our heroes were actually villains. Our treasured memories were built on lies and deception, and our most respected institutions were founded on crime, corruption, and human suffering. But confronting these uncomfortable truths is the only way to ensure we do not repeat the mistakes of the past and fall into the same moral traps that claimed previous generations. The 1895 medical school photograph will forever stand as evidence of what happens when the pursuit of knowledge abandons ethical boundaries and when institutions fail to provide proper oversight. It challenges us to question everything we think we know about history and to never assume that a smiling face in an old photograph tells the whole story or represents the truth about someone's character. The image forces us to confront the reality that evil can hide behind the most respectable facades and that good intentions can be used to justify the most horrible crimes. What other family photographs might be hiding similar secrets waiting to be discovered? What other stories from our past are lurking in archives and attics, waiting to be uncovered by historians willing to look beyond the surface and ask the difficult questions? This case proves that sometimes the most shocking discoveries are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to dig deeper and seek out the uncomfortable answers that challenge everything we thought we knew about our history and ourselves.